15 black child stars who vanished from Hollywood without a trace. What if some of the black child stars who once made America laugh were secretly living through pain, loneliness, addiction, illness, and heartbreak behind the scenes? From Gary Coleman and Todd Bridges to Lee Thompson-Young and Michelle Thomas, these young celebrities were loved by millions, while privately fighting battles most fans never knew existed. Some lost everything after fame disappeared. Others tragically lost their lives far too young, before ever getting the second chance they deserved. Hollywood gave them applause, money, and fame, but for many of them, it also brought pressure, exploitation, emotional trauma, and isolation that followed them long after childhood ended. Which former child star's story shocked or saddened you the most? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join Remembered Lives channel for more unforgettable celebrity stories. Todd Bridges. Todd Bridges became one of the most recognizable black child stars in America after starring as Willis Jackson on the hit sitcom Different Strokes during the late 1970s and early 1980s. With his charm, confidence, and famous catchphrase exchanges alongside Gary Coleman, Bridges seemed destined for lifelong Hollywood success. Millions of families welcomed him into their homes every week, believing the young actor was living a dream life. But behind the laughter and television fame was a painful reality that slowly pushed Todd toward addiction, crime, and near self-destruction. Born in California in 1965, Todd entered the entertainment industry at a young age, while facing enormous pressure long before adulthood. When Different Strokes became a massive success, the fame arrived quickly, but stability did not. After the show declined and eventually ended, Bridges found himself trapped in the shadow of the character that once made him famous. Hollywood stopped calling auditions, disappeared, and the young actor who once earned applause suddenly felt forgotten. As rejection grew, Todd turned to drugs, searching for escape. Cocaine addiction quickly consumed his life during the 1980s, pulling him into dangerous environments filled with violence and crime. He faced multiple arrests involving narcotics, weapons, and reckless behavior. At one point, Bridges was even charged with attempted murder after a shooting involving a drug dealer, shocking fans who remembered him as a cheerful sitcom star. Though he was acquitted, the scandal permanently damaged his public image. Behind the addiction and legal troubles was a man battling deep emotional pain, abandonment, and the harsh reality of child stardom. Todd later admitted that Hollywood gave him fame without teaching him how to survive life after success disappeared. What makes Todd Bridges' story so emotional is that he came dangerously close to becoming another tragic Hollywood statistic. After years of chaos arrests and overdoses, he eventually fought his way toward recovery and redemption. His survival became rare proof that even after fame destroys someone's life, it is still possible to rebuild from the ruins. Lee Thompson-Young. Lee Thompson-Young looked like the perfect success story of a Disney generation. Intelligent, talented, and charismatic, he became famous as the teenage star of The Famous Jet Jackson, one of Disney Channel's most beloved shows during the late 1990s and early 2000s. Audiences admired his confidence and warm personality, believing his future in Hollywood would only continue rising. But behind the smile and television success, Lee quietly fought a painful internal battle that very few people truly understood. Born in South Carolina in 1984, Lee entered acting at a young age and quickly gained attention for his natural talent and maturity. Unlike many child stars consumed by scandal, Lee appeared disciplined, focused, and emotionally grounded. After Disney fame, he continued building a respectable acting career with roles in films and television, eventually starring in the police drama Rizzoli and Isles. To co-workers and fans, Lee seemed calm, intelligent, and professional. But privately, he struggled with severe depression and bipolar disorder conditions he reportedly fought silently for years. Friends later revealed that Lee often hid his emotional pain behind politeness and professionalism, rarely allowing people to see how deeply he was suffering internally. On August 19, 2013, tragedy struck when Lee failed to arrive on set for filming. Concerned producers contacted authorities, who later found him dead inside his apartment from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He was only 29 years old. The shocking news devastated fans and co-workers, because almost no one realized how serious his mental health struggles had become. What makes Lee Thompson Young's story so heartbreaking is the silence surrounding his pain. Unlike many Hollywood tragedies fueled publicly by addiction or scandal, Lee's suffering remained largely invisible until it was too late. His death became a painful reminder that even people who appear successful, kind, and emotionally strong can secretly battle darkness no one else can see. Today, Lee is remembered not only as a talented actor, but also as a symbol of the mental health struggles often hidden behind fame pressure and public expectations. Jamie Foxworth. Jamie Foxworth was once one of the brightest young faces on television, beloved by millions for her role as Judy Winslow on the hit sitcom Family Matters. During the early 1990s, audiences watched her grow up on screen as part of one of America's most recognizable Black television families. With her charm, humor, and natural talent, many believed Jamie had a long Hollywood future ahead of her. But behind the scenes, the entertainment industry was already preparing to erase her without warning. In 1993, after 4 seasons on Family Matters, Jamie suddenly disappeared from the show. There was no emotional farewell episode, no explanation for viewers, and no proper goodbye for the young actress herself. Producers shifted attention towards Steve Urkel, whose popularity had exploded nationwide, and Judy Winslow was quietly written out, as if she had never existed. For a 14-year-old girl, the rejection was devastating. After losing the role that had supported her family financially, Jamie struggled to find work in Hollywood. Auditions became scarce, opportunities vanished, and the child star who once appeared weekly on national television suddenly felt invisible. Financial pressure at home worsened the emotional pain. Over time, Jamie turned toward drugs and alcohol while trying to escape feelings of abandonment and humiliation. Eventually, desperation pushed her into the adult film industry, a decision that shocked many former fans when it became public years later. Jamie later admitted that she felt trapped emotionally and financially during that period of her life. Instead of support, she often faced ridicule and judgment from the same public that once adored her as a child actress. What makes Jamie Foxworth's story so heartbreaking is how quickly Hollywood discarded her once she was no longer useful to the show's success. Yet despite addiction, public shame, and emotional trauma, Jamie eventually chose recovery and rebuilt her life away from the destructive path that nearly consumed her. Gary Coleman. Gary Coleman became one of the most famous child stars in television history after starring as Arnold Jackson on Different Strokes. With his unforgettable catchphrase, "What you talking about, Willis?" Gary captured the hearts of millions during the late 1970s and 1980s. Small in stature, but enormous in personality, he became the highest-paid child actor on television at the height of his fame. To the public, Gary looked like the perfect sitcom success story. But behind the laughter and popularity was a life filled with betrayal, loneliness, and heartbreaking decline. Born in Illinois in 1968, Gary suffered from a severe kidney disease that permanently affected his growth. Despite constant medical struggles, his talent turned him into a massive television star while he was still very young. Yet the success that made others rich failed to protect Gary himself. Years later, he discovered that much of his fortune had been mismanaged and drained by the very adults trusted to protect him, including his parents and advisors. After Different Strokes ended, Hollywood largely abandoned him. Directors struggled, seeing him as anything other than Arnold Jackson, leaving Gary trapped by the role that once made him famous. Acting jobs disappeared, money problems grew worse, and his health steadily declined. By the 1990s and 2000s, the former child superstar was working ordinary jobs, including security work, while facing public ridicule and emotional isolation. Fans who once laughed with him now often laughed at him instead. Despite appearing tough publicly, Gary privately battled depression, financial hardship, and deep disappointment. In 2010, Gary Coleman died at age 42 following a brain hemorrhage after a fall at his home in Utah. His death marked one of Hollywood's saddest examples of child stardom gone wrong. What makes Gary Coleman's story so tragic is that the little boy who brought joy to millions spent much of his adult life feeling forgotten by the same industry that once celebrated him endlessly. Merlin Santana. Merlin Santana became one of the most promising young black actors of the 1990s, earning recognition through television shows like The Steve Harvey Show, Moesha, and The Cosby Show. Handsome, charismatic, and naturally talented, Merlin represented a new generation of rising stars whose careers seemed destined for greatness. Fans admired his confidence and charm, while Hollywood viewed him as a young actor with enormous potential. But just as his career was beginning to flourish, tragedy ended his life in a shocking and senseless act of violence. Born in New York City in 1976 to Dominican parents, Merlin began acting as a child and quickly built an impressive resume in television. By his 20s, he had become especially popular for his role as Romeo Santana on The Steve Harvey Show, where his humor and chemistry with the cast made him a fan favorite. Unlike many young celebrities consumed by scandal, Merlin maintained a relatively clean public image while focusing seriously on his career. That made the events surrounding his death even more devastating. In November 2002, Merlin was spending time with a friend in Los Angeles when a false accusation changed everything. A teenage girl reportedly claimed Merlin had made inappropriate advances toward her, a story later proven untrue. Enraged by the accusation, several men targeted the actor. Shortly afterward, Merlin Santana was shot and killed near his home, at only 26 years old. The murder shocked Hollywood and devastated fans who believed his future was only beginning. Many people struggled accepting that a young actor with so much promise could lose his life over a lie and a moment of senseless violence. What makes Merlin Santana's story so heartbreaking is not only the tragedy of his death, but the future that was stolen from him. Behind the bright smile and rising success was a young man who never received the chance to fully become the star many believed he was destined to be. Danielle Spencer. Danielle Spencer became a familiar face to millions of television viewers after starring as Dee Thomas on the beloved sitcom What's Happening during the late 1970s. Smart, funny, and confident on screen, Danielle represented one of the brightest young black actresses of her generation. Audiences watched her grow up each week, believing she had a long and successful future ahead in Hollywood. But behind the laughter and television success was a life that would later become filled with pain, survival, and heartbreaking health struggles. Born in New Jersey in 1965, Danielle entered acting while still very young and quickly gained popularity because of her natural charm and comedic timing. Yet even during her years of fame, she quietly dealt with serious medical challenges. As a child, she underwent risky spinal surgery to correct scoliosis, a condition that caused dangerous curvature in her spine. The operation saved her life, but it also marked the beginning of years of physical pain and health complications. Then, tragedy struck again in 1977, when Danielle survived a devastating car accident involving her stepfather, who died in the crash. Danielle herself suffered severe injuries that permanently affected her body and mobility. Despite recovering enough to continue acting, the accident changed her life forever, physically and emotionally. As years passed, Danielle stepped away from Hollywood, while focusing on education and eventually becoming a veterinarian, proving she wanted a meaningful life beyond television fame. However, health struggles continued following her into adulthood. In 2014, she publicly revealed she had been diagnosed with breast cancer, leading to another painful battle for survival. What makes Danielle Spencer's story so emotional is that while audiences remembered her as the cheerful little sister from television, her real life became a constant fight against pain, loss, and illness. Yet through every setback, Danielle showed remarkable resilience, refusing to let tragedy completely define her life. Christophe St. John. Christophe St. John spent decades as one of the most respected actors in daytime television, earning fame and admiration through his powerful role as Neil Winters on The Young and the Restless. Handsome, talented, and emotionally compelling on screen, Christophe became a beloved figure for millions of viewers around the world. But behind the successful career and public smile was a man carrying unimaginable grief and emotional pain that slowly consumed him over time. Born in New York City in 1966, Christoph began acting as a child before building a long and respected career in television. For years, he appeared to represent stability and professionalism in Hollywood, earning multiple awards and praise from fans and critics alike. Yet his private life changed forever after the devastating loss of his son, Julian St. John. Julian struggled with severe mental health challenges, including schizophrenia and depression. In 2014, tragedy struck when Julian died by suicide while receiving treatment at a mental health facility. The loss completely shattered Christoph emotionally. Friends and family later described a man overwhelmed by grief, guilt, and emotional exhaustion after losing the child he loved deeply. Following Julian's death, Christoph reportedly battled depression and alcoholism while struggling to cope with overwhelming sadness. Although he continued trying to work and maintain public appearances, people close to him noticed increasing emotional instability and despair. In February 2019, Christoph St. John was found dead at his home in Los Angeles at age 52. The official cause of death was hypertrophic heart disease, with alcohol listed as a contributing factor. His death devastated fans and shocked the entertainment world. What makes Christoph's story so heartbreaking is that beneath the fame and success was a grieving father who never fully recovered from losing his son. The emotional weight became too heavy, leaving behind one of Hollywood's saddest stories about grief, mental health, and silent suffering. Michelle Thomas. Michelle Thomas lit up television screens during the 1990s with warmth, beauty, and natural charisma that instantly connected with audiences. Best known for her roles on Family Matters and The Cosby Show, Michelle became one of the most beloved young Black actresses of her generation. Fans admired her bright smile and gentle personality, believing she had a long and successful future ahead in Hollywood. But behind the promising career was a devastating health battle that would tragically end her life far too soon. Born in Massachusetts in 1968, Michelle grew up surrounded by music and entertainment before eventually finding success in acting. Her role as Myra Monkhouse on Family Matters made her especially popular, as viewers loved her chemistry with Steve Urkel and her emotional warmth on screen. Unlike many young stars surrounded by scandal or controversy, Michelle built a reputation as kind professional and deeply respected by co-workers. Just as her career continued growing, Michelle received heartbreaking news in the late 1990s. Doctors diagnosed her with a rare form of stomach cancer, known as intra-abdominal desmoplastic small round cell tumor, an aggressive disease that is extremely difficult to treat. Despite surgeries and treatment, the cancer spread rapidly throughout her body. Friends and cast members remained by her side during the painful battle, including Family Matters star Jaleel White, who later spoke emotionally about her kindness and strength. Even while seriously ill, Michelle reportedly tried remaining positive around loved ones. On December 23, 1998, Michelle Thomas died at only 30 years old. Her death shocked fans because she was still so young and appeared to have an incredibly bright future ahead. What makes Michelle's story so heartbreaking is the innocence of the tragedy. Unlike many Hollywood downfalls involving scandal or addiction, Michelle's life was stolen simply by illness. Behind the beautiful smile and rising success was a young woman whose future disappeared far too quickly. Shavar Ross. Shavar Ross became known to television audiences during the late 1970s and 1980s through memorable appearances on popular shows like Different Strokes and Family Ties. As a young Black actor with charisma and talent, he represented another promising child star growing up inside the demanding world of Hollywood. But while viewers saw cheerful performances on screen, Shavar privately endured painful experiences that later shaped the rest of his life. Born in New York in 1971, Shavar entered acting at a young age and quickly gained recognition through television commercials and sitcom appearances. One of his most memorable roles came during a controversial Different Strokes episode dealing with child abuse, a subject that would later connect painfully to his own real-life experiences. Years after his child stardom faded, Shavar publicly revealed that he had experienced sexual abuse during his youth inside the entertainment industry. His emotional honesty shocked many fans because he had hidden the trauma silently for years while trying to continue living normally. Like many former child actors, he struggled with emotional scars created during early fame and exploitation. Unlike several other child stars destroyed by addiction or crime, Shavar eventually turned toward faith and ministry while trying to heal from his painful past. He later became involved in religious work and motivational speaking, using his story to encourage others facing trauma and emotional suffering. What makes Shavar Ross's story so emotional is the contrast between the smiling child audiences watched on television and the hidden pain he carried privately for years. His life became another reminder that fame often hides suffering audiences never see until decades later. Matthew Beard. Matthew Beard became one of television's most recognizable child stars during the 1930s after appearing in the famous Our Gang comedy series, later known as The Little Rascals. With his round glasses, innocent charm, and lovable personality, Beard quickly became a favorite among audiences during Hollywood's early golden era. Millions of families watched him grow up on screen, never imagining that behind the laughter and childhood fame waited years of hardship, addiction, and a tragic early death. Born in Los Angeles in 1925, Matthew entered the entertainment industry while still very young and quickly found success through comedy roles that showcased his natural charisma. At the height of his fame, he appeared in dozens of short films and became one of the most recognizable black child actors in America, during an era when opportunities for black performers were extremely limited. However, like many child stars of his generation, Beard struggled after growing older and losing the cute image Hollywood once celebrated. Acting opportunities became scarce, and transitioning into adult roles proved difficult. As fame faded, Matthew reportedly battled financial problems and addiction, particularly heroin use, which severely damaged both his health and career. During the 1960s and 1970s, Beard experienced repeated arrests and periods of instability while trying to survive far from the spotlight that once adored him. Although he later attempted rebuilding his life through rehabilitation and religious faith, the years of addiction had already taken a devastating toll physically and emotionally. On January 8, 1981, Matthew Beard died from complications related to a stroke and pneumonia at only 55 years old. His death quietly closed the chapter on a former child star many audiences had long forgotten. What makes Matthew Beard's story so heartbreaking is how quickly Hollywood moved on after the laughter ended. The little boy who once made millions smile spent much of his adult life struggling to survive after fame disappeared forever. William Thomas Jr. William Thomas Jr. became memorable to television audiences through his role as Buckwheat in the Little Rascals era that followed the original success of Matthew Beard. As one of the young black child performers appearing during a difficult period in Hollywood history, William represented innocence and comedy for millions of viewers watching family entertainment during the 1940s. But behind the cheerful performances was a young actor whose life after childhood fame became far more difficult and painful than audiences ever realized. Born in California in 1931, William entered acting as a child and quickly became associated with one of the most recognizable comedy franchises in American entertainment. Yet, unlike major white child stars who sometimes received lasting opportunities, many black child actors during that era faced extremely limited futures once they grew older. Hollywood often celebrated them temporarily, before quietly abandoning them once their childhood image faded. After leaving acting, William struggled to build a stable career outside entertainment. Opportunities in Hollywood disappeared, and life became increasingly ordinary compared to the fame he experienced as a child. He eventually worked regular jobs, including technical work connected to the film industry, while trying to support himself away from the spotlight. Friends later described a man who carried disappointment about how quickly the entertainment industry forgot him. Although he avoided the massive public scandals that destroyed many former child stars, William still experienced the emotional difficulty of watching childhood fame vanish permanently. In 1980, William Thomas Jr. died from a heart attack at only 49 years old. His passing received little public attention, despite the joy he once brought audiences through one of Hollywood's most beloved comedy franchises. What makes William's story so emotional is the quiet sadness surrounding it. He did not die surrounded by fame or celebration, but largely forgotten by the industry that once benefited from his talent as a child. Mark Kopech. Mark Kopech became a familiar face to television audiences during the late 1960s after starring in the sitcom Julia, alongside legendary actress Diahann Carroll. As Corey Baker, the intelligent and lovable son of Carroll's groundbreaking character, Mark represented one of the first positive portrayals of a black family regularly seen on American television. For many viewers, he symbolized hope and progress during a period of enormous racial change in America. But after childhood fame faded, Mark discovered how quickly Hollywood could move on and leave former child stars behind. Born in Los Angeles in 1962, Mark entered acting while still very young and quickly gained national recognition through Julia. The series itself became historically important because it portrayed a successful black woman outside the stereotypes Hollywood had long forced onto black actors. As part of that success, Mark became one of television's best-known black child actors during the era. However, when Julia ended in the early 1970s, opportunities for Mark became increasingly limited. Like many former child actors, he struggled escaping the image audiences already associated with him. Hollywood offered fewer meaningful roles as he grew older, especially for young black actors facing an industry still filled with racial barriers and limited representation. Over time, Mark stepped away from major acting roles and largely disappeared from mainstream entertainment. Although he occasionally appeared at nostalgic television events and interviews, his career never regained the momentum it once held during childhood. What makes Mark Kopech's story so emotional is the quiet disappearance from fame. Unlike stars destroyed publicly by addiction or scandal, Mark experienced something many former child actors fear most: being slowly forgotten after once being celebrated nationwide. His story reflects how temporary fame can become, especially for young performers growing up inside an industry that constantly searches for the next new face. Rodney Allen Rippey. Rodney Allen Rippey became one of the most recognizable child celebrities in America during the 1970s. Famous for his unforgettable television commercials, cheerful smile, and lovable personality that made audiences instantly adore him. As the face of wildly successful Jack in the Box advertisements, Rodney turned into a nationwide sensation before even reaching his teenage years. His popularity exploded so quickly that he appeared on talk shows, variety specials, films, and magazine covers, becoming one of the first young black commercial stars to achieve true mainstream fame in America. Born in California in 1968, Rodney entered show business at an incredibly young age and quickly captured public attention with his natural charisma and comic timing. At the peak of his popularity, he was one of the most recognized children on television. Companies saw enormous marketing potential in him, and audiences viewed him as a symbol of innocence and joy during a changing era in entertainment. But child fame rarely lasts forever. As Rodney grew older, Hollywood gradually lost interest in the image that once made him famous. The adorable little boy America loved suddenly faced an industry constantly searching for younger faces and new trends. Acting opportunities became limited, and the spotlight faded far faster than most people realized. Unlike many former child stars who fell into addiction or crime, Rodney avoided major public scandals, but emotionally, the transition away from fame remained difficult. Years later, he openly discussed the challenges of growing up after experiencing celebrity status so young. The applause disappeared, the cameras moved on, and ordinary life became a painful adjustment after years of public attention. What makes Rodney Allen Rippey's story emotional is not a dramatic scandal or shocking downfall, but the quiet reality of being forgotten by an industry that once treated him like America's favorite child. Behind the laughter and famous commercials was a young boy who learned early that fame can disappear almost overnight. Malcolm Jamal Warner. Malcolm Jamal Warner became a television icon during the 1980s through his role as Theo Huxtable on The Cosby Show, one of the most successful sitcoms in American television history. Smart, relatable, and charismatic, Malcolm represented a generation of young black actors finally receiving positive mainstream visibility on television. Millions of viewers watched him grow up weekly inside America's most famous television family, believing his future in Hollywood would remain bright forever. Born in New Jersey in 1970, Malcolm entered acting while still young and quickly gained national fame after The Cosby Show became a cultural phenomenon. Unlike many child stars overwhelmed by sudden success, Malcolm appeared thoughtful and grounded even during his years of fame. As the series dominated television ratings throughout the 1980s, he became one of the most recognizable young actors in the country. However, life after child stardom remained challenging. Once The Cosby Show ended, Malcolm faced the difficult task of escaping the shadow of Theo Huxtable, a role so iconic that audiences struggled separating him from the character. While some former child actors spiraled into addiction or legal chaos, Malcolm chose a quieter path, focused on steady acting work, directing music, and poetry. Still, the collapse of Bill Cosby's public image years later created emotional complexity for everyone connected to the show. Malcolm publicly expressed sadness over how the scandal affected the legacy of a series that once meant so much to black television history and American culture overall. What makes Malcolm Jamal Warner's story emotional is not tragedy in the traditional sense, but survival. In an industry filled with former child stars destroyed by fame addiction or emotional collapse, Malcolm managed to protect much of his dignity and stability while navigating the pressure of growing up under worldwide attention. Behind the television success was a young actor who quietly fought to build a life beyond childhood fame, without losing himself in the process. Behind the laughter, fame, and unforgettable TV moments, many black child stars were secretly fighting loneliness, addiction, depression, illness, and heartbreak long after Hollywood stopped calling their names. From Gary Coleman and Todd Bridges to Lee Thompson Young and Michelle Thomas, these young stars gave millions of people joy while quietly carrying pain most fans never saw. Some lost their lives far too early, while others spent years trying to recover from the emotional damage of childhood fame. Their stories remind us that success in Hollywood does not always protect people from suffering once the cameras stop rolling. But here's the painful question. Did Hollywood truly fail these child stars after using their talent for entertainment? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join Remembered Lives channel for more emotional celebrity stories.